welcome to Zoonosis with Joy. I'm Joy, and today we're going to be talking about rabbit domestication. I know it's after Easter, but I've just been thinking about bunnies for the last few weeks. I have rabbits at home, and I've always been really interested about rabbits and their domestication and all the things that we do with them. But as we'll see today, rabbit domestication and its understanding, it's a little bit complicated and it doesn't seem to have any good answers. Oh, sorry to spoil the video, but I'll talk more about that in a second. So rabbits, what are they? Rabbits are lagomorphs, they're not rodents. Easy to get them confused. They have these little peg teeth behind their incisors, which distinguishes them. That's kind of a nerdy zoological fact. They're both herbivores, small fuzzy herbivores that breed a lot. So if you get them confused, don't worry about it too much. The kind of rabbits we're talking about are domesticated rabbits. They are descended from the European wild rabbits, which are Ortholactis canuculus. There are other kinds of wild rabbits, of course. There's wild hares, there's the American wild rabbits of Silvolagus, but the ones we're talking about are specifically ones that are found in Iberia and southern France. That seems to be where rabbit domestication happened. But we don't know how, when, or why it happened. So it seems that it probably happened over the course of centuries, and it didn't happen that long ago. Now, if you think about dog domestication, it probably happened at least 14,000 years ago, probably older, deep in the Paleolithic during the last ice age. Rabbit domestication seems to have happened after the last ice age. In fact, it happened after the agricultural revolution. It probably happened within the last 2,000 years, and at least the tail end of it. So I'm going to talk about the historical evidence, the archaeological evidence, and the genetic evidence, and they all seem to contradict each other. So stay tuned for that. Let's start with the historical evidence. We know that kind of around the 1st century BCE, the historian Garreau pointed out that the Romans were raising rabbits in captivity, fattening them up, and then eating them for feasts. Case closed. We figured out rabbit domestication. We can go home now. No, not so fast. So the Romans kept a lot of wild animals in captivity, right? They kept lions and tigers and bears, oh my. Of course, for the Colosseum, for feeding slaves and people to them, gross. But they also kept other kinds of fuzzy small animals in captivity so that they could fatten them up and eat them. The most famous of which would be like dormice. They kept these like rodents that live in Europe that go into torpor, they go into a deep sleep, and they fatten them up in these jars. And they kept these rodents in jars, and they would just give them lots of numbings so that they could eat up, they get nice and chunky, and then they would eat them. That seems to be what happened with rabbits as well. Domestication is not simply just animal husbandry. You actually also have to be actively breeding them, controlling their reproduction, shaping their phenotype and behavior, that kind of thing. So domestication is a little bit more complicated, and Garreau's account doesn't point to domestication, but rather animal husbandry, a little bit different. But we start to see more and more evidence into the Middle Ages that rabbits are being domesticated. Now, you may see online this story about monks domesticating rabbits in the 7th century in Spain. There's not a lot of evidence for this. The story goes, and I'll tell you it now, that Pope Gregory the Great made an edict about what sorts of meat are okay to eat during Lent. Catholics can't eat meat during Lent. They can only eat fish, so the fasting rules are very important. And according to the story, St. Gregory says you can eat lorises, but not adult rabbits. Lorises are the fetal rabbits, fetal and the newborn rabbits that are produced by rabbits. And I don't know what the appeal is here, but if they're not meat, then it's okay to eat them. Problem is getting them. You have to actually raise them in captivity or find a pregnant doe out in the wild and kill her and then eat her. Yeah, it's gross. But you have to imagine this. That means that they have to find a ready source of these lorises so that they can have meat during Lent. And the story goes that monks started raising them in captivity specifically for this purpose during the 7th century, and this led to rabbit domestication. Case closed, right? Not so fast. So part of this problem with the story is that it confuses St. Gregory of Tours with Pope Gregory the Great. St. Gregory of Tours wrote a story about lorises and it has nothing to do with Lenten fasting. So we don't really know if this has anything to do with rabbit domestication, and the story about Lent seems to be completely false.
Hi, this is Joy from the editing chair. Just wanted to mention that I'm actually a little bit off here. It turns out that St. Gregory of Tours does talk about lorises, and he does talk about Lenten fasting, but he says exactly the opposite of what this myth states. He's actually chastising someone for eating lorises during Lent, which is a grave sin. He's eating meat, and that is considered a sin. So eating these lorises is actually considered sinful behavior, not holy behavior. That's very fun. I posted the screenshot here. But yeah, it seems to have nothing to do with rabbit domestication in any case.
Okay, scratch that. But we know that at least by the Middle Ages that there were domesticated rabbits, that people were keeping them in warrens and hutches, and then eventually that led to the formation of rabbit breeds. And most rabbit breeds only come from about 200 years ago. Now, that's the historical evidence. What does the archaeological evidence say? Well, interestingly enough, rabbits seem to have spread throughout the Mediterranean islands in the Mediterranean about 2,500 years ago. So this would have been the time of the Greeks and the Phoenicians before the Roman Empire really got going. The Phoenicians, of course, led to the formation of Carthage. So rabbits that were not present on these islands before were starting to show up there. Now, whether these are wild rabbits that are being imported for the purposes of hunting, or if they're escapees, or whatever, what have you, it seems that people were moving rabbits around and doing some kind of trade with them. Okay, well that's a little bit more convincing. Another story is probably apocryphal, it's probably not true, is that the land of Hispania, which is where we get Hispanic, it's where we get the word Spain, or Hispania if you're Spanish, is that the Phoenicians called the land of hyraxes. Now, hyraxes aren't rabbits, they're kind of their own thing. They're more closely related to elephants, strangely enough. But hyraxes look a lot like rabbits, and when they saw them from their boats, they're like, oh, hey, look, the hyraxes. And they're rabbits, they're different. But the name probably stuck, and it became the land of rabbits, and the Romans kind of started using the term too. Okay, that's probably not true either, but that's the story that gets pumped around the internet. You're going to find it one way or another. So that's archaeological and historical evidence. What about genetic evidence? So the genetic evidence suggests that rabbits were domesticated during the Pleistocene, during the last ice age, around 12,000 to 17,000 years ago. The evidence suggests that the molecular clock of divergence between the wild rabbits of Europe and domesticated rabbits happened about that time. Now, this could be due to incorrect calibration of molecular clocks. It could be due to the fact that they have different genetic sources. Maybe the domesticated rabbits all kind of were from a different population that separated during the Ice Age. We don't really know. So it doesn't give us a lot of information. All that being said is that by the time of the Middle Ages, people in Western Europe were keeping rabbits and trading them. They were using them for food primarily, but also for their fur and for their other qualities. Domestication did not simply change the rabbit's physical appearance, although it has produced over 300 different breeds of rabbit, such as our Angora rabbits with a long, beautiful fur that is plucked off and then woven into wool, Angora wool. There's also the Rex rabbits, where you have the guard hairs that stick out, that are shorter than the downy hairs that stick out, and they're very fuzzy. But there are also behavioral and neurodevelopmental things that are different in rabbits. So it seems that rabbits have that specific mutations that are related to domestication all happen in the brain and in the nervous system. And it's supposed that these are related to domestic rabbits being more tame and more handleable than wild rabbits. One of the genes that's implicated in this domestication is actually also related to autism and Tourette syndrome. So maybe there's some interesting sort of neurodivergent sort of things going on. We stand. Anyways, what about the skull? So you may have heard things from Charles Darwin talking about domestication syndrome, saying domesticated animals have different traits than wild animals. One of the things that rabbits seem to have different in domestication than wild rabbits is they have a smaller brain. Their brain case shrinks, and this may be also related to their tameness. And this has caused skull shape changes as well between wild rabbits and domesticated rabbits, which is also kind of interesting as well. This tameness has made rabbits really good for domestication. Unfortunately, it's also led to many problems with rabbits, of course. You think about all the rabbits that are used for research for pharmaceuticals and scientific research and for cosmetics. That's part of the reason, is because rabbits are so tame, they're so gentle, they're so tractable. It's also why rabbits are kept for their meat and their fur, and that of course means that you can mass harvest them and that sort of thing. But on the bright side, it also means that we can use rabbits for pets. You know, they're very domesticated, they're very tame, you can handle them, you can feed them, you can love them and pet them. That's not something that every animal you could do with. So rapid domestication has produced a kind of a very interesting phenotypes, over 300 different breeds, very weird coats, they're more tame and more tractable. But we don't really know exactly what happened. We do know that it probably happened around the Roman Empire, kind of in this area of Spain or southern France, and that it probably is related to eating meat somehow. I wish I could give you more information than that, but that's what we have right now. Trying to research and study and understand domestication is quite difficult, and it's mired with a lot of ideological problems and a lot of other sort of humanities problems. So one place that you can learn about that, of course, is the Membry School, which I'm affiliated with. I taught a course there last year about horses that is available for recordings via the Membry School. So if you want to learn about horse domestication and the way that humans have interacted and loved and killed horses, you can definitely watch the recordings there. I'm going to post a few more videos about domestication here and there, but if you're interested in learning more about domestication syndrome and domestication, I'm doing a course with them next year about that specifically. The signups aren't open yet, but stay tuned, I'll tell you when that is. That's all I have for today. If you want to leave any comments about domestication or about rabbits, leave them down in the comment section below, and I will see you next time. Peace.